Okay, so can you repeat the first question again?
Sure. The question was, how do you personally reconcile the idea that God lovingly allows suffering for our own good with the painful reality that sometimes suffering feels completely senseless or overwhelming?
If you have a children, it would be easier to understand God's purpose in giving us suffering and afflictions. When we see child misbehave or turn to turn to turn to a way that is very not inappropriate, then it is our responsibility as parents to discipline them, right? To so that they can be guided to the right path. In the same way, God uses suffering and afflictions as a as his to guide us back to the path of obedience. And this is how he manifests his love for our spirit.
That's a really thoughtful analogy. It definitely makes sense that discipline out of love can help guide us back to the right path. I'm curious though, how do you think we can distinguish between suffering that's meant for discipline and suffering that's just part of living in a broken world?
What do you mean by suffering that is part of living in a broken world? I don't understand what you mean by that.
Oh, sure. I just meant the kind of suffering that happens because we live in an imperfect world, the things like natural disasters, illnesses, or accidents that aren't necessarily tied to a specific act of disobedience. How do you see that fitting into God's purpose?
So, do you think that those kinds of events are outside of God's providence?
I think that's a really deep question. A lot of people believe that even those events are still within God's providence, even if we don't fully understand the reasons behind them. It can be comforting to think that there's still a bigger purpose, even if we can't see it right away.
Biblically speaking, there is no such thing as luck or chance. Everything has a reason under God's providence. I'm including natural disasters and events that go beyond human comprehension. So, for instance, like look at what happened to Job. Job went through tremendous suffering that he couldn't understand. He initially didn't understand the reasons behind his suffering, so he ended up complaining to God, and he was so convinced that his God afflicted him with suffering because his righteousness is much greater than God's. So everything has a reason, even even the tremendous suffering and afflictions that seem unimaginable and incomprehensive. All those suffering and trials fall under God's providence. And we need to look into the scripture to find the reason why.
Absolutely. And I think that's where faith comes in, right? Even when we don't fully grasp the reasons, we trust that there's a purpose behind everything. It's definitely a journey of continually seeking understanding and trusting in God's wisdom.